Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Drop-In CEO Live Talk Media. I am grateful to have my guest today, Dr. Kinga Mnich, who is a social psychologist and impact coach who focuses on positive psychology and emotions. And she's a world traveler. She has a tremendous amount of culture experience, a master's degree in sociology, physiology, and a PhD. She is a really smart, interesting person and somebody I can say I can call my friend who's going to have a great conversation with me and for you today. Welcome, Kinga, to the show.
Thanks, Deborah. Thanks.
All right, I am so excited for that. So, if you follow me on social media, one of the themes I talked about this week was blind spots in leadership. And what can you do short term and long term to see the opportunity and take action? Because sometimes, if we let these blind spots go too long, they can negatively impact you. And people like Kinga and myself are ones that can help you find those blind spots. So, Kinga, I would love your perspective on this story. I know you coach some tremendously successful people. Tell me a little bit more about blind spots and the impact on their potential.
Thanks so much for suggesting this topic, and bringing it up. It's a really important topic in such a way that quite often, especially the longer we are in a specific position or the longer we do one specific thing, we start moving into a routine, right? We start developing specific habits, and then we start just automatically do specific things, because that's what our brains are for, right? Our brains are trying to make our environment and everything that we are doing a lot easier for us in order to preserve energy, in order to, be able to compute and process also all the additional data that we are receiving on a daily basis with every interaction that we are having with anything that is around us. So in that process of understanding what's happening on a daily basis, we are developing these habits. And with developing these habits, we forget sometimes that we need to take a stand, or actually step aside in order to reassess situations. We need to be able to change the perspective in order to stay creative. And right now, there are a couple of buzzwords, I guess, that are floating around a lot in the coaching industry, or business industry, but also buzzwords that marketing people are using. And it's the growth mindset versus the set mindset in that regard. And we could rename it with many different terms. But basically what it just really means is that we are keeping our mind, our brain active in such a way that we don't fall into any routine. Because routine means we are stopping the progress, we are stopping innovation, we are stopping creativity. And in order to stay more creative, in order to be able to be a better problem solver, in order to be able to recognize also possible obstacles sooner, we need to keep our mind flexible and on that growth side of things. Let me say it like that. Because in order to be fast enough, in order to be able to be flexible enough, it's really important for us to keep that healthy mindset. And I guess I would, want to call it rather healthy mindset or optimistic mindset instead of growth mindset.
And that goes in hand with your studies and your area of expertise is positive psychology, because we can get so much more, as you've taught me, through positive reinforcement, looking at people's strengths and expertise versus working on the things that are broken, are not our passion, or we're just not very good at. So I love that approach, but, I would love to bring it home. Tell me a little bit more about the work, because I know you work with so many professional women and men who are already successful. They're not just stepping into the ring for the first time, but somebody you've worked with that is really successful, but perhaps they've gotten to a point where they're no longer growing. What does that look like, and how have you helped them, again, see the blind spots and the opportunity to grow?
And it's actually really excellent question. I was actually trying to write a blog post exactly on that topic, and I love it that you asked that. But I think the first, or the most, maybe it's actually not the first sign, but the most obvious sign for many leaders or many people that are in leadership positions, that are inspiring others, that work with other people, I honestly believe that the most alarming signal that they receive is being tired. You know,
Ooh.
tired and lack of energy, realizing like I'm doing what I'm really passionate about, but I don't feel that passion anymore. Or, being able to say, I won't be able to continue the way I'm doing it right now. And here's the interesting thing, because just because you realize that something is making you tired, just because you realize that something is maybe depleting your energy levels, doesn't mean that you haven't been on the right track. It just means that there's a time to change something. And I think that there's the difference between people that understand that consistent growth means that we need to consistently adapt and find new ways, and in these new ways also allow ourselves to consistently fail as such. I was reading yesterday an interesting article, and they were just like naming all the inventions that were a result of a failure, and an accident that kind of
Mhm.
happened. And understanding, that when you are hitting, it's that feeling of hitting a wall, right? You're getting up every morning and you're not able to move things forward. So whatever moving things forward means to you. And of course, in order to bring it to practical examples, I guess the best way in order to understand if you are starting to hit a wall is if you have specific goals. By specific goals, I mean, goals that are measurable, they're timely, and they're realistic. And let's say by the end of a quarter, you realize that you haven't met any of those goals. That could be an indication, for us to measure it, because I know that leaders, especially CEOs or people that just work in big corporations, or even entrepreneurs that have their own startups, they usually come to me and they're like, okay, great, I'm ready for this. I want to do this. But how do I know that I'm making progress?
You bring up something really interesting. I was just in a mastermind yesterday and amongst some leaders, and they were talking about, I got to do it all myself. I'm just going to focus on this. I maybe need a virtual assistant because I can't do all that stuff anymore. And I'm starting to think like, no, you don't need a virtual assistant. You are tired. You're overwhelmed. You're not getting what you want. To your point, those are just telltale signs of something has to change. Not that anything
Yeah.
is bad, but you talked about energy and being tired. And it may not be something technical or tactical what they're doing, but something in their head like, why is this difficult? Why is this challenging? Why do I feel like I'm beating myself up against a wall? I used to like this. I don't like it anymore. People sometimes will run away and say, well, I guess I'm not cut out for that. But what then are those couple of those blind spots that, okay, I'm tired.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, then what, from a positive perspective or a psychology perspective, do we need to move through to say, oh, I'm energized again. I'm not tired anymore. I can continue to do what I love to do.
Well, we need to also in that moment recognize what's actually making them tired, right? We need to first recognize what's depleting that person. And understanding, is it the structure? Is it the lack of resources? Is it maybe a phase in the business that they just went through, and now they are completely depleted because it was a growth phase? I mean, you might have been dealing with investors, you might have been dealing with a wave of people resigning. COVID, I mean, I think that COVID is a great example of why some leaders are just really tired, because especially when you're in leadership, quite often a lot of leaders have to take care of their teams, but who's taking care of the leaders?
Yeah.
So and that's kind of like the higher you get, or the more bigger you build your own company, the more you are, or the less support is there, right? The journey becomes more lonely. Let's say it like that, and so in that particular point, I think it's not just about understanding what are your blind spots, because blind spots could be not understanding, what the positivity ratio is, right?
Mm.
For example, not knowing that you need to give X amount of positive feedback in order to recalibrate the negative feedback that you are giving your employees. I feel like that's quite often actually a blind spot. I will talk to people like, yeah, I'm optimistic, I'm a visionary, and also a source of that. And when I ask them to record conversations, or feedback sessions, or let me participate in feedback sessions, and then I start taking the notes and like, wait a moment, like it's so off, like your positivity versus negativity balance is really off. So that is that practical blind spot. But that comes out in interactions. The other blind. So I think that we have two levels of blind spots. We have the blind spots that we have in interactions with either colleagues
Yes.
or employees,
Yeah.
and we have the blind spots towards ourselves where we are not being honest with oneself.
Very, very powerful. Very powerful. So as I think through this, and actually we're going totally off script right now, off the theme. No, but this is really, really, really interesting because, when it comes to interactions, I employ tools like, okay, if we want feedback on this interaction, what should I continue to do? How am I supporting you? What might I start doing to elevate the interaction and how we're performing? And what might I change because maybe it's detracting from the interaction? That's very powerful to help those relationships and get away from the energy drain of maybe a difficult situation to being honest and open with each other and level setting and getting an understanding so you can move forward so it's not draining, but being honest with yourself. So you can't, unless you go to a place of deep reflection and start thinking about what are you doing and the behaviors and the impact on others, or how do you feel? It's sometimes hard to figure that out. And so that's the hard work there. That's the good work that you do when leaders come to you to try to find out what's inside. What can I not see? So,
And
yeah.
that isn't it also, like with that inside game or the emotions game. I just had my husband actually, like we just had lunch together today, and he's like, I see everywhere on LinkedIn and anything that he's receiving, he's like, everything is on the topic of emotions. Everything is, people talk about how to feel. And here's the component that people don't realize, especially as leaders. We try to be rational. We try to be objective. We try to do data-based decisions. We try to lead from a perspective of knowledge instead of intuition. Because we are being taught X, Y, Z, and this is going to help you to, achieve the best results. And of course, now I come in and I say, yes, there's such thing as a positivity ratio. So it is also a place of knowledge, but at the same time, I think we all need to take a step back and reconnect with ourselves, reconnect with emotions, and finally come also to the understanding and the acceptance that as human beings, we cannot be non-emotional. Therefore, that full understanding of being rational and not emotional actually doesn't exist, because in order to connect with one another, we need to be emotional. So it is, as for us as humans, it is impossible to take out emotions. But now, if you're not connecting with them correctly, how are you going to be leading from a place of authenticity? And again, it's another buzzword as such, but from a place of true connection, from a place of who you are, being able to be empathetic, being able to be true, and be able to create a dynamic, an environment, and an energy in which people want to work, and in which people want to flourish, and in which people feel feel actually safe enough to be creative, because creativity means also we are going to fail. Right? And failure, because failure is part of the progress. I hope that all of made sense, in this kind of like spiral.
It
Yeah.
so does, because we try to compartmentalize, to your point, all of that intellectual thinking, and that is the only problem-solving tool that we need. But I too have come to find out I never trusted my gut, my intuition. And in fact, I'm working with somebody now, grateful to be working with somebody who thinks I can help them get through a challenge.
Mhm.
And technically, she has everything down that she's going to do to correct the situation. But I'm starting to ask questions like, how do you feel? And you can see the body language go very small and they go very reflective. They've tried to detach it, but it's so holding them back. And I think they know the answer and they're not trusting their intuition. And I'm hoping that we can bring that out. Really important point. We don't develop this enough in leaders. Some people have it, some people don't. And we don't help people to look for their intuition. That may be where they can find their blind spots
Mhm.
and the things that drag down their energy.
Mhm.
Wow. You are amazing, Kinga.
Thank you. No, but Deb, if I may, I just want to put out a question in this. Like lately, especially in the last couple of months, and then being here in the US, I've come across more stories of actually men in leadership really struggling, and more men and men struggling also with understanding their emotions and being not just true to themselves, but also having the ability to express actually what's going on.
Absolutely.
And based on the culture, based of the narratives that are going on and how we are also classifying and putting people into boxes, I think that we are really doing a disservice into both directions. And I am a feminist. I love working with women, but at the same time, I did my PhD on men and emotions, and I am at this crossroad where I feel like, when are we going to really start that conversation that neither of us, now talking just in those two genders, but no one really in our society is being taught how to actually understand and learn and cope with their emotions and then communicate with them correctly. We are either saying women are too emotional, and then we are saying men don't have enough emotions, so that is not right, and this is not right, so how are we going to start balancing that? And how can we bring that into the discussion and then into the latest trend? And that's something, that you might also find of interest, is we have this entire shift going on in the world. I think that people are more and more realizing that there's enough space and enough resources for all of us to flourish and live a fulfilled life. And there's a really great book, I'm just looking at it, sorry, the non-zero, it talks about how we are on the verge as a society, global society, of understanding that we can all live in a win-win situation and therefore create full abundance. And in order to do so, I think we need to start understanding our feelings and emotions, because our feelings and emotions is what holds us back, and locks us also in. And so, to your blind spots are being created by the experience of emotions that we are classifying as negative. And I'm saying on purpose, not negative emotions. I'm saying emotions that we are classifying as negative. Because anger doesn't have to be negative, Anger, like yesterday, I was actually on Clubhouse in an amazing room, and there was a young woman. She came as a refugee, Syrian refugee, to the US. And she said, I don't know why I cannot move forward. I don't know why I cannot progress. And I'm like, because you're angry. And you have the right to be angry. Like, we have the right to be angry about situations that have been unfair, unjust. But if we don't recognize it, we won't be able to move forward.
Such amazing advice. I can take away so much of advice right now, but I do want to bring it to a close. But this, I think, is incredible content that you have shared, Kinga, about, blind spots. You should do more of this. This is what people are saying about you. That's very superficial. And yes, the starting point for some of the work that you do. But I love what you say, gender neutral, tying the emotional aspects of who you are, as well as the tactical ways that you're showing up in the world. I think the combination is a powerful tool to see the blind spots and then start to move forward so you're not so tired and you're energized by the work that you're doing. I'd love to bring this to a close. For people that want to catch more of Kinga, she was also my guest on the Drop In CEO podcast, episode 59, if you want to catch more of her. But if you want to connect with her because she does amazing work for already successful men and women, how can people connect with you, Kinga?
They can connect with me over LinkedIn. They can hop over to my website and fill out the form that is on the website. They can connect with me on Instagram. I'm really almost on all platforms. So happy, feel free to reach out on any of them. The fastest way still is LinkedIn or Facebook, because we are somehow still all the time on the phone. But the preferred way is actually via email, because then I have the chance to get to know someone, and you can always just exchange a little bit. But so any of the platforms, yeah. And my email address, you can find it also on my website.
All right. I am grateful. And if you, to my community here, thank you for joining myself and Kinga today. If you like more of this, please show up every Wednesday around this out time, as well as the Drop In CEO podcast, where I get to speak to amazing leaders and share their insights with you, as well as people like Kinga. So thank you so much for being an amazing guest.
Thank you so much, Deb, for having me again. Thank you.
Thank you.